Welcome to the Creative Flight. This is one of those solo episodes. It's just me, no guests. So you're going to either get a story, a little check-in, or a question, or maybe I'll do all three. Today, I want to talk about letting go, and maybe not in the way that we often hear about it. Not just the kind of letting go that comes from wisdom or clarity, but the kind that comes from exhaustion, from heartbreak, from just having enough. Because sometimes you don't decide to let go. You just get to the point where you're like, I can't hold this anymore. And maybe that can be the beginning of something. A few years ago, I took something called a saboteur test. It's part of a framework known as positive intelligence, created by a man named Shirzad. He's a coach, a lecturer, and the author of a book also called Positive Intelligence. And what he discovered is that success isn't just about IQ or EQ, it's about how well we manage the internal voices that sabotage us. Makes sense, right? He calls them saboteurs. And he has a quiz that you can take that helps you identify which ones are the strongest in you, so you can work with them instead of being ruled by them. Sounds great, right? So I took it, and the idea here is that we all have internal saboteurs, little voices, patterns, and reactions that we have. They're built up there to protect us at some point. Whenever something happens to us, we have these things inbuilt in us so that we can protect ourselves. But over time, these voices, they start working against us and they chip away at our peace and they keep us small. So when I got my results the first time, I scored a 10 out of 10 on the controller saboteur. Maybe I'll show it here. Well, it's not a good thing. You're not meant to score 10 out of 10. You're meant to score as little as possible so that your saboteurs are lower. But if you know me, it probably, or if you knew me, I'd like to say, it wouldn't be so surprising. Because for me, it wasn't about being organized or responsible or detailed. It was a need to know. And it wasn't in a curious way. It was in a controlling way, in a protective way. I needed to know that whatever was happening for a reason. I needed to understand who was coming and what the plan was, because knowing made me feel safe. And if I knew what would happen, then I could control the outcome, or at least control the perception. Or so I believed. And that's the part that's done. It wasn't even about the experience. It was about how I would be seen. And the idea of being misunderstood, that was unbearable. Now that control for me showed up pretty much everywhere. At work, in relationships, even in conflict. And that doesn't mean that I was a micromanager. It just meant that I needed to know quite a lot. And how that would transpire would change depending on situation. But let's say if something was unfinished, I needed to finish it. I couldn't just leave it. It would kind of manifest in itself as an OCD thing, but I don't have OCD. I just had controlling tendencies. Gosh, I sound so awful and so wicked. If we would be in mid-argument, I needed the conclusion. So let's say you needed some time and some space to just think. I'd be like, no, we need to resolve this. Not because it needs to resolve in my favor. I just needed the resolution. And this clashes when someone else needs space, right? So things could get messy. And I'm obviously highlighting all the negative. This isn't the norm, but this is how it would transpire. Gosh, now I'm feeling all self-conscious about how I'm coming across, but I've left that behind, which is why I'm sharing it right now. I've done a lot of work since then, and not the kind of work that shows up neatly on a timeline on Instagram. Not the kind you post about, that kind of go like, yay, I've succeeded in this. It's been 10 years for me. It's been slow. It's been uneven. And I suppose it's been real. I've had to sit with parts of myself I didn't want to look at. And I don't say that lightly. I remember the year everything broke open for me, and it was 2015. And this is going to be the moment where I give a trigger warning for speaking about things that are relating to suicide. So look at the show notes to see where you can enter again. I will make a note. So 2015. On the surface, it was sparkling, amazing. Like I was in demand, I was recognized, I was celebrated. It looked like everything was working. Money was flowing in, people were working for me, press was getting in touch with me. It was brilliant. But inside, I felt like I was disappearing. There were days I didn't want to live. I didn't have a plan, but I had the thought. And that thought was the scariest thing I'd ever encountered because it wasn't loud. It was persistent and it was quiet. And it sounded like maybe it would just be easier if I wasn't here. I knew I didn't want to die because I reached out for help. I didn't just sit in silence and commit suicide or try to commit suicide. But I also didn't know how to keep living the way I was living, so I tried to get help. And I remember the first time I reached out, no one responded. And I was so frustrated. This is the system. It let me down. I literally had to scream to be heard. And even then, it wasn't the system that helped. It was something else. It was something unexpected, something out of my comfort zone. If I would have not been in this state of desperation, I probably would never have gone down this pathway. It was something softer. I was invited to go to a meditation. I didn't want to, but I'm like, sure, whatever. And I was in a room with another 50 people. And it was a meditation led by Jody Shields, and she was saying the statement or the beginning of the meditation, and she used the words, now say to yourself, I surrender. I mean, what? I broke. I'm like, no way can I surrender. I am keeping everything in me right now. I cannot let this gate open because I don't know what will flood out, and I just don't know what to do with all of that. I just left. I was 2 or 3 minutes in, and I remember thinking, no. I cannot surrender. In my mind, surrender meant weakness. I had to be strong. I had people relying on me. I had employees who, I see the contradiction. I wanted to go, but yet I had the responsibility. But I didn't really want to go, right? Surrender meant losing control. Surrender meant I wouldn't know how to put myself back together. I would have no idea. But maybe that's exactly what I needed at that point, to simply fall apart and to rebuild. This time more gently. And it's a really long story, so I won't go into all of that. But since then, it's been years of slowly learning to let go. Not all at once, but over time, changing, learning about who I am and how I operate. And it's usually the change was more noticeable when I started noticing that I wasn't reacting the same way. I wasn't rushing to fix. I wasn't rehearsing conversations in my head. I wasn't over-explaining. I wasn't absorbing other people's moods as my responsibility. And that, for me, was the most powerful kind of change. It's not what I did, but what I stopped doing. Since 2015, I've been on a journey of self-love. If you've been listening to anything that I've said, that's been my personal project all this time. I feel very confident in my business, but not confident in my personal self. I know that sounds like a contradiction in itself, but I can be really good at what I do. But do I love myself? I would like to say, did I love myself? Who knows? I didn't. I know I didn't. So what I've been trying to cultivate is not the curated kind, it's the real kind. The kind that lets you look in the mirror and say, I love you, even when your skin is flaring, even when your hair is thinning, even when your body is changing up and down in weight, making you feel uncomfortable, even when your heart is tired. I can say that now, but it took time. And if you're listening right now, thinking, gosh, will it ever shift? Yes, I believe it will. Change doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes the only proof that it's working is the absence of what used to be there. Maybe you didn't spiral. Maybe you didn't cling. Maybe you didn't shrink. And that's how you know you've let go. So maybe this isn't just about control. It's about all the ways we try to protect ourselves long after we need the armor. And when we're ready, we loosen the grip. One moment at a time. One breath at a time. A conversation we walk away from, a decision not to explain, a boundary we hold with grace. It adds up. And if you're in the middle of it and you're tired of holding it all, please know you don't have to fix it all today. You don't even have to let go all at once. Just start noticing. Notice the absence, notice the quiet, notice the gap between the reaction and the response. Notice what's no longer needed, because slow change is still change. And letting go doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're ready to live lighter. If you enjoyed this, please don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends, wherever you're listening or watching. I appreciate you. Thank you for flying with me today. I'll see you on the next one. That's it for today's episode of The Creative Flight. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, I invite you to leave a review. It really helps more creators find the show. For more insights and behind the scenes content, you can follow me on Instagram or LinkedIn. You can also check out my resources on ivymalik.com. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time. Until then, keep creating, keep pushing those boundaries, and keep taking flight.